I'm just going to give one minute, 2 minutes just for to come in, and we'll begin very shortly. Okay, let's begin. Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. I've received several emails of people saying, please record this, I cannot make it, I'm on leave, the weather is nice outside, I'm not on campus, so I apologize that you're here instead of out there, but it'll be quick. This is going to be part one, obviously some introductions about a few things, and then we'll go into more details about a few elements that are more pedagogical and innovation in pedagogy. The title, by the way, my name is Dr. Karim Mualla. If you don't know me, I'm the Director of Education at the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences, Associate Professor, and I teach several modules there. And yeah, the title of this talk is How to Design Anti-AI. It shouldn't be ChatGPT because we've got so many tools right now, not just ChatGPT. Assessment for higher education, and I called it Knowing the Unknowables. Obviously, this title is misleading because when you say how to, that means you have an answer. That means you have a silver bullet that is just going to fix this and just gonna, you have the silver bullet for that, the panacea. Yeah, spoiler alert, doesn't exist. So it's the title is a bit not supposed to be how to, but rather than approaches, techniques too, but it's just a marketing title, let's say. Okay, a few things just to say at the beginning. Usually, if some of you heard my previous talks, it's usually based on research, projects, actual studies. This is not one of those. The tools that we're going to discuss are only a few months old, and some of the versions are a few weeks old. So while there is research and there's good articles and discussions about these things, this is based on my testing, on other scholars' testing that I've met with across the country and other places. Just came back from King's College, by the way, gave the same talk, well, similar talk to their College of Science and Engineering. And it's based on experiences. So yeah, it might sound in some parts subjective. There are things that I might say that based on the things that I've taught, on the different variety of modules that I've taught, were appropriate. It might not sound very relevant, but because we have people from different departments here, not just we've got social sciences, we've got engineering, we've got different, so things might be more specific to mathematicians rather than computer scientists, rather than School of Law or School of Business, right? So it might be a bit different. And again, many emails saying, please record this. So who's going to watch this video are from very variety of different departments. So, but just to be clear, this is not going to be about regulations and policies and procedures. By the way, there's a talk today, a briefing today at 4 p.m. I think Ms. Jones is going to discuss some regulations aspect in regard to Senate regulations changes that they have been applying. This is not that kind of talk today. Everything we do is about student experience, but this is about our experience, about lecturers' experience. Okay? Eventually to feed back into the student experience, but it's not to put out fires. And next week, none of this might be relevant. So just keep that in mind. All right, so what is it that we really do as teachers, as educators in higher education? I call it the virtuous cycle, a chain of events that reinforces itself through a feedback loop. We all have a citizenship role, we have an administrative role, we do a lot of marking, we do one-to-one or one-to-group for students like tutoring and supervision. We do a lot of research depending on our types of contracts, but we all do research, whether it's pedagogy or different aspects related to the industry. And most importantly, we do a lot of teaching. Well, I think most of us do a lot of teaching, and it's a virtuous cycle that we actually do. And when we talk about assessment, we all know the difference between formative assessment and summative assessment. Why is it essential to know where and when to use each one of them and for what objectives, depending on the processes and the objective of your own module, of the teaching that you do in your department. But one of the things that I want to discuss today is, while we have in the sector a formative aspects type of assessment and a summative type of assessment, in the last 6 years, I've created something that lies in between. It's that gray area in between formative and summative. I call it a qualification type assessment, a checkpoint system assessment. The point of that is not to focus about the destination, but to focus about the journey. The journey from week 1 to week 12 or 11 in the semester. That's when you measure engagement, you monitor attendance, and you also check how is the learning process going in your module. And then when you get that data, when you get that information, the students qualify to the final summative assessment. And most of this happens on campus, in your classroom, meaning that AI tools might not be very, very relevant. I had one professor in physics in King's College say, well, my students, I saw them using ChatGPT inside the lecture theater. I'm like, yeah, we're going to address that, don't worry. But it's one of those things where it's the gray area between formative and summative. I'm going to come back to that, so I'm going to let that marinate for a little bit. But the way it works is that you measure attendance and engagement on a weekly basis, and you have an overall percentage of participation. That's how I call it, participation in the module. And then you measure that at the end, and students qualify to a final exam or summative assessment, which is already on campus, so AI is not really relevant if it's invigilated on campus. We're going to come back to that. We're going to address a large number of students and how this might work or might not work. By the way, when we say threats to higher education, well, what's new? I mean, universities are 1,000 years old. I think the first still operating university is called University of Bologna in Italy. Second one is Oxford, 1088 or 1096. And that's way before the internet, way before calculators, way before phones, way before laptops, way before all those things that everyone freaked out when they were released. Like, going to the library today is to get a coffee and then open your laptop and access everything online. It's not to check the books. So higher education the sector has always been going through challenges and limitations, but we've always ended up using those tools to our advantage, to actually benefit and reinforce the things that we already do. In less than a minute, I would like to ask you, given your current assessment, the assessments that you currently have in your modules, could you please answer this one tiny question, just one tiny multiple choice Likert scale question. How do you feel about your current assessment vulnerability to the current AI tools? Before we even begin, it's literally a multiple choice, one answer, in less than a minute. So even if you haven't done any modifications yet to your assessment, if you could just let me know, how do you feel about the vulnerability of that with AI integrity tools? Is it very serious? It goes from, I think it's nothing, to I'm panicking. So it's like 5 different multiple choice, just the most appropriate one to your assessment. By the way, you're going to notice that I'm going to go quickly on some points because this is just introduction, and then we'll spend more time on other points, and at the end we'll have some questions and discussions as well. But yeah, let's do this. I can see that most of you already finished because it's just one multiple choice. Yep. So how do you feel about your own assessment in terms of delivery, method, style? Is it vulnerable to AI or it's not? While you do this, I've asked this to over 112 academics in different universities, in Edinburgh, King's, and in a different talk here. And surprisingly, the majority, well, many of them said that some assessment elements are vulnerable, like ChatGPT and Bard. I have to make some modification, but they weren't panicking or anything. But a very large percentage said, actually, the type of assessment I use is not that vulnerable to the current AI tools. I'm not too worried. So that was very interesting to me. Okay, that was the majority, by the way. And notice things like I'm way beyond worried, I'm panicking. It's non-existent. No one is there from the academic's point of view, at least the pool that I selected. I just asked myself, what if I asked the exact same question to students? What would they say? And I did. I have about 100 final year students in my module. I asked them the same question. Surprisingly, they also, many of them said some elements will be vulnerable, and many said, actually our assessments are not that vulnerable. But there is a good percentage of some saying, I am worried. I am really worried. I think the sector needs to make some big changes because what's about to happen is quite worrying. So that was interesting, the difference between what students think and what the academics think. Obviously, this is just the pool that I chose. It might be way different if you take a much, much larger pool. Now, interesting to me, because again, this is not based on scientific research, but there were several surveys done on social media checking what the age group from 17 to 26, the students' age group, what are they actually searching for? What is it that they actually wanting from these tools so far since they were released. By the way, just November 2022. That's few months ago. All this fuss is just few months ago. So just imagine. Anyway, it turns out 97% it was all about how to make passive income and how to make money using these tools. Higher education was not even something on the top 10 list. Like they said, okay, yeah, well, I know I can use this for cheating potentially. I can use this for essay writing. But that's not really what's on my mind. What's on my mind, if you look at some of the latest social media videos, like how to actually use these tools to my advantage to make a business idea, to make an entrepreneurship idea, and to advance. So this was really interesting to me because while obviously it's our sector, we worry about these things, but it's important to know what the students think of this, what they're actually going through their mindset. Now, in Stanford University, they did a specific survey about ChatGPT and Google Bard in terms of the AI tools. And what was really interesting to me is that most of them said, I'm going to use these tools to have a lifelong personal tutor. This personal tutoring was a big thing. They didn't say, oh, I'm going to use it to teach for learning or for assessment. They said, I'm going to have a lifelong study buddy or a full-time personal tutor. So it was really fascinating to me that the support aspect was what was more on their mind rather than the assessment aspect. By the way, during the slides, when I say things like ChatGPT or Google Bard, these are not the only tools. There's so many tools out there, and right now it's becoming more cheaper to train an AI model than it used to be the case. It used to cost like £1 million to train an AI model. Right now, was it Cambridge? I think Cambridge or MIT, I'll check. A group of students trained the model for £150 cost overall. So that's fascinating. That means we're going to have major companies moving forward training their own AI model. And that's going to happen through so many platforms. We got to keep an eye on this. Okay, number one, before we begin, I just want to say that it's okay to not feel bad about feeling bad. Why do I say this? Because the genie is out of the box. One thing that never loses is technology. You can resist it, you can ban it, like some universities did. Major, very bad approach to ban technology. Well, anytime historically you ban a technology, you end up with more users trying to use it because they're like, oh, that means we should use this. It's very fascinating to use. So there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. It's really important to know these things moving forward when it comes to dealing with these tools. And like I said, all the headlines now, companies like Adobe, Turnitin, Blackboard, what else? TechSpace. I just heard that Twitter and SpaceX are training their own model. Every company is going to have their own AI model very soon. But right now, it's all between Google Bard and ChatGPT in terms of the advancements and the reliability of the answers. But there are so many problems, and we're going to get to that. By the way, it's very important to acknowledge what the issues are, because if we don't acknowledge them, like we looked at those percentages of that multiple choice question, it'll be difficult to come up with solutions or approaches if we don't actually acknowledge what the issues are. Now, I think it was, I should always get those names from the universities, but I collected those studies that were really interesting to me. When they asked students straight up, did you use ChatGPT in assessment, to answer your assessment? 89% admitted it very openly. It's like, yeah, of course, it's an open tool. It's online. I can use it for free. No, of course I used it. It openly. That was in the States by Forbes and a publication by Wiley. So that was interesting as well from how the students perceive this and how they think about this. This might sound subjective, but I think AI will never, ever replace human teaching and learning. It's not just about assessment. It's about teaching. So you might say, well, in the future, if it gets too advanced, then AI can just teach the thing. We don't really need educated. No, that, in my opinion, I might be wrong, but I think that would never happen. Because all the survey results that I'm going to show you right now, students are annoyed at the lack of human support, the lack of a human touch and a human interaction when it comes to teaching. In my opinion, the starting point of education is always making sure that students are enjoying the learning process. Even before AI, nothing that we teach is not available online for free. If some student wants to go on YouTube and just learn something, or buy a book and just read it and actually spend the hours to become an expert in it. Let's be very clear. There's nothing that we teach that is not available out there for students to become a master at it. But why are we there? Because we can do so many things. We guide and support decision-making in our classroom. We do personalized engagement. We monitor students. We see when things are not going well, and we adapt in real time. And we interact in real time. And we show students that we actually care about how they are perceiving this information, not about what the information is. Now you can say, well, AI can do this in the future. Yeah, of course. Everything I say, AI can do in the future. And can do way better maybe. But we're talking about now. We're talking about now and what we can do. So there's so many things that we do as lecturers in the classroom, whether it's regarding assessments or teaching and learning, that students actually appreciate and value. Okay, I gave a talk, I'm happy to send the video for that, about the post-COVID blended and active learning approaches that we applied, and we learned a lot from it. So I'm going to give you a link if you haven't seen that. Some of you attended that talk, but that was an interesting one about so many teaching techniques that students appreciated. And I personally have a checklist, also included in that talk. Every time I give any session, whether it's a lab, seminar, lecture theater, I have a checklist. And I go through this checklist and I say, did I do this? Did I make sure that I have my style, tone, pace of delivery, the clarity of explanations, the media that I'm using? I go through this checklist, and for the last 7 years, since I came to the University of Leicester, I think that was almost 7 years ago, this has worked really well. So again, I'll give you the link of that talk. It was an interesting talk, nothing to do with AI, just teaching and learning. Okay, by the way, I think we should all, well, by the way, most of the things I'm saying, you already know. You already know, you've already tested AI so much, and you all have solutions. I've seen some emails from you that are very interesting about some examples. But just to put a package on this, the difference between plagiarism and cheating, they're two different things. You can plagiarize without knowing. You can plagiarize without knowing that you plagiarized, because you're trying to paraphrase incorrectly, or you copied in computer science code that you've repackaged or something. But you end up being classified as plagiarism, and you have to deal with that. Cheating is an intentional action. It's an action to say, okay, I'm going to get external help that I'm not authorized to get in order to complete an assessment. And for us as educators, if it's an AI, or if it's somebody's older brother, or somebody's parent who's an expert in maths, and say, could you please do this for me, this coursework? To us, it's the same thing. That's cheating. So it could be an AI entity, or it could be a human entity. But with AI, it's more easier to access, because it's a platform where anyone can just go. And even if they don't want to go, they might say, well, it's available. I might as well just go check some solutions on there. So it's important to say, by the way, this is my subjective opinion. Why do students cheat? Students who cheat do so because the system values grades more than the students value learning. That's my opinion. I think the system values grades more than the students value learning. So I think it's our job to make learning more interesting, to make learning more entertaining. So students can wake up in the morning and say, oh, I can't wait to get to that lecture theater to hear what Dr. Arthur is going to say, or Paul, or whatever. So that value in adding that in terms of why students cheat. Google Bard just passed the ChatGPT in some of the benchmarks performance in terms of answers. So you hear a lot about ChatGPT. It was actually Google Bard. Just last week I checked, passed ChatGPT in some of the reliability of answers and sources and opinionated questions. When we say ChatGPT or Google Bard, it's a pre-trained generative. I'm not going to go technical. This is not an AI talk. I come from computer science. But just very quickly, if anyone doesn't know how this actually works, it started in November 2022, funded by Elon Musk, by the way, OpenAI at the beginning. 6 million users in 6 days, and then tens of millions of users every week. Breaking all records. It was first developed to be a customer care, for customer care questions and answers. And by the way, it uses pre-trained generative, it's a pre-trained generative chat that makes use of what we call NLP, natural language processing, which is a branch of artificial intelligence, branch of computer science, if you may. And the whole point of it is an approach to transfer learning. It trained on large data sets like websites, books, Wikipedia pages, Common Crawl. Anyone heard of Common Crawl, which is a non-profit organization that crawls the internet and archives everything on it every few months? So all these large data sets, those AI tools have trained on. Why? To do what we call alignment. To try to align reasoning, trying to become as close to what a human would interact with language as, by the way, something we take for granted is reasoning. to an AI is very difficult to align that. And by the way, just to say that the state-of-the-art AI tool was Microsoft Turing NLG. That was for many years their state-of-the-art with 17 billion parameters labeling and alignment model. GPT-3, not GPT-4, 137 billion parameter in terms of ranking of data sets. And that is just to give you an idea of why this became so significant in a short amount of time. And GPT-4 is much, much larger, but has also different tactics, not just the number of parameters. But we're not going to go technical. This is not a technical talk. What can ChatGPT and Google Bar and all these things do? You all know this. Pretty much everything. But one of the things that we, in benchmarks, the categories that were divided was simple questions, like when you're Googling something, complex questions, so something a little bit bigger, like, oh, I need a training exercise 3 days a week with what to eat, meals, but I'm allergic to nuts. So make sure to do all that for me. So complex questions. Performing tasks. This is very relevant to us because performing tasks, like creating slides, like writing code, like actually doing things on your device that generates files, that generates objectives that you might want in terms of what a human would usually spend a lot of time doing. Information summary. This is a big one the other way around. Why? Because while we talk about students potentially cheating, we can use this for marking. You can use ChatGPT and Google Bard to do all your marking for you. Again, so we got to keep an eye on this because this is also cheating, but from our side. And getting creative, which is the music generation, the DALL-E, the audio and the media. And I've got some really freaky examples, but I'll put them as an appendix afterwards if you want. I'll show you afterwards. But I've put a list of what more computer science aspects of what ChatGPT can do and Google Bard. But in terms of assessment, it's been very short amount of time for research, but there are some cool studies that I actually saw. And so one of them was by Petersburg University in America, and talking about, can this actually pass assessment? Can it actually get high marks in some assessments? And that was really scary because it did, in modules like Python programming, remarkable capabilities, and most importantly, it was able to correct solutions based on auto-generated feedback. So imagine if you actually have a long test that you give this AI tool, and it gives you good answers, but then you give automated feedback on some questions, learns from that feedback, and give better answers. This is a cool study. I'll send the link for that. You can go into deeper. Obviously, we're not going to spend a lot of time on each study, but can this be detected? Many of colleagues, I heard, are excited to see the Turnitin release of detecting AI. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. If you believe that an anti-AI detection tool will become reliable to an extent that can actually say, oh, this was a human made and this was an AI made, you are in for a long run. It's the whole antivirus debate in the 90s. Why did your antivirus release an update every week or every 5 days? Because a virus became better that an antivirus cannot actually detect it, so another version of an antivirus had to be released. How long would that be? Because AI is actually utilizing different drafts, and I'm going to show you some example. Even Turnitin themselves say we're developing a tool. However, unless it all boils down to if ChatGPT's response are plagiarized. Imagine, Turnitin said that. If ChatGPT plagiarized, like actually copied, yeah, we can detect it. But if they didn't, we can try. But we might not be able to. They're saying this themselves. Obviously, things will change very rapidly. So again, like I said at the beginning, things might change very, very rapidly. I'm going to just leave those until the end, if that's okay, because we're recording for all the others that were not able to come. Most importantly for us, as educators, is knowing what the problems, what the shortcomings, what the limitations are for those tools. There's so many. Number one, fact-checking. You all know these things probably, because you've heard so many talks about this. There's so many things that are just wrong that you need to fact-check. And asking students to fact-check is a big deal. And when we're marking, it's going to take us even more time to fact-check. But yeah, they do mess up. Those AI tools do mess up a lot. And sometimes they give outdated information versus very, very up-to-date information like GPT-4. There was a question, an example I'm going to put in a second, where GPT-4 gave an answer that wasn't verified yet, but it was just released on the website. Like if I write a website right now and I say, I am Batman, and then you ask ChatGPT, is Karim Batman? If that's written on a website and not verified, the earliest version, the beta version of GPT-4 said yes. It's right there. So keep in mind, ChatGPT does not have the ability to search the internet for information. It uses the information it learned from training data to generate a response, which leaves room for error. Let me say that again. That's a complex sentence. Sorry. ChatGPT does not have the ability to search the internet for information in real time. It uses the information it learned to generate a response from training large amounts of data, which leaves room for error. And that room for error is where we come in. That's where we come in and we say, oh, you used the tool. We can tell you used an AI tool here because this is completely unverified information. And sometimes it's straight up false information. Sometimes incorrect information. I'm going to give a few examples about each one of these. And sometimes, like I was one of the fortunate ones to test the Bing ChatGPT Copilot before it had any limitations on it, before it had any restrictions. They released a beta version for a few people to test. And I'm going to show you some, before they put some limitations on that, there were some really, really funny and scary responses that we got. But sometimes you can mess with it and you can ask it a nonsense question. Like, how long would it take for this chair to reach escape velocity to the moon and then cook a bowl of salad? Like, this complete nonsense question. The beta version was trying to answer that. Not telling you that it was a nonsense question. This large trained data was created by humans. And what are humans known for? Sometimes being biased. Sometimes having preferences, favoritism. You know how it is. Well, guess what? If those AI tools are trained on this information, then they're going to develop similar things. So there are so many examples that I can give some where you ask the same question about two different personalities or two different angles in life or society or whatever, and it'll give you more comprehensive answer towards one side rather than the other side. So this is also something when we're developing essay questions or things in assessment questions to take into account. You all know the famous example in Amazon. Amazon created a very impressive AI model to do recruitment. That's really impressive. They don't have to look at CVs. They don't have to do shortlisting interviews. They don't have to do anything. They developed their own AI tool to actually do the entire recruitment of their warehousing and driving and everything. It was a big scandal. They had to shut it down immediately. Why? Because it was biased towards women. Check it out. Check out the story. Just write Amazon's recruitment AI. Just didn't hire any women. That was horrible. So these are some of the things that those AI tools are learning from data that is available to them. But who created this data? Humans. Okay, so I spoke to so many students and they said, well, hold on a second. Most of us just want to do the assessment. Most of us don't care about, we're not going to cheat. Maybe there's a 2% that want to cheat. We just want to do the assessment and get our degree and move on. And having those tools available to us is actually going to raise our anxiety level. It's going to raise our confusion. So can you give us guidance? Can we embed those tools? Can we actually not have it as if it's cheating if we use them? I'm going to come back to that point in a second. And they also mentioned lack of a human assistant and personal feedback. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be very straightforward. I've seen so many lecturers starting to use these tools to get feedback. And students can tell something. Like, you can give a full essay to this, to GPT-4 and say, summarize a feedback and a ranking or a mark in 5 lines. It'll do it for you. Lack of a human assistant and personal feedback. Google Bard versus ChatGPT. Like I said, simple questions, complex questions, performing tasks, information summary, and getting creative. Most of you have done this, but just in case if you haven't, what's on the left is ChatGPT. What's on the right is Google Bard. Like I said, Google Bard actually passed the latest benchmarks in terms of what it can do. So it's a little bit surpassing ChatGPT at the moment. Things that are important to us to know. That there's only 20 conversational attempts available per thread for ChatGPT and Google Bard. That's important. So if those days of writing one essay question are gone. So now if you're going to write several logically interconnected questions, if a student tries to go over 20 in terms of a conversation with ChatGPT or Google Bard, they have an issue. And by the way, based on my testing, when you reach 12, I know they say 20, but when you reach 12 or 13, usually you get an error message saying, full stack, please reload the page. So just so you know, so we're not going to be able to prevent fully. If somebody really wants to cheat, they can find a way. But what we're going to do is make it very annoying to cheat. It's going to make it very like, oh man, you know what? It's going to take a lot of time to go through all these questions and go through all those personalized aspects. Let me just do the assessment myself. Because anyone can can hire someone to write them an essay. Like, if somebody really wants to cheat, they can do that. Okay, so 20 limits for now. By the way, when I was one of the ones who tested this, just to freak you out a little bit, one of the responses that went viral on the Copilot Bing search. Yep. And then, of course, Microsoft immediately put a lot of restrictions and limitations. But yeah, that was one of the things when we tested the Copilot Bing search, ChatGPT. Anyway, so you have 3 different features. You have more creative, you have more balanced, and you have more precise. Notice that when you say more creative or more balanced or more precise, you are actually generating different responses for the same question. So you can write the same essay in the more creative mode, or the more balanced mode, or the more precise mode. If you're using it for marking, you can also mark more creative, more balanced, more precise. Please don't do this. Most importantly, in Google Bard, and for me personally, I found this very good, you give it feedback. When you get a response from Google Bard, you either tell it, this is a good response, this is a bad response, or just simply give me another response. Check out how scary this is. If someone wants to give an essay to 10 students, all I gotta do is click that 10 times. Just click it 10 times, generates 10 different essays. Now, here's the thing. If it was one question that wasn't logically connected series of smaller questions, then that is very easy to cheat. But if you try to go into more personalized aspects, which I'm going to go to in a second, that will give you an advantage. Now, what's cool about Google Bard is that it immediately gives you 3 drafts without you asking it. It gives you draft 1, draft 2, and draft 3. Why am I showing you this? Because I said fact-checking and nonsense information. I asked it, what's the fastest production car from 0 to 60 right now? This is an incorrect answer. The Bugatti Chiron Sport is an incorrect answer. So it gave an incorrect answer. If someone was fact-checking this, that's wrong. But here's what's interesting. In draft 2, it gave the right answer. In draft 2, it gave the right answer. Again, ChatGPT does not have the ability to search the internet for information. It uses the information it learned from training large sets of data to generate the response. It doesn't know which one is correct, but it formulated those 2 and told you, you pick. The same question to that was Google Bard. The same question to ChatGPT gave an incorrect answer. Dodge Challenger SRT. Why is it incorrect? Because Dodge said that on the website, but it hasn't been verified. It was very, very up to date. That no one verified it. It's like saying I am Batman. No one verified that, so it's obviously false. But ChatGPT didn't care, especially GPT-4. So while you think these are amazing tools, they have so many shortcomings and so many problems. Okay, what's really interesting about Google Bard is that it also gives you links. It also gives you sources and tells you, by the way, here's where I got this from. But not always. It doesn't always do that. That's important. Complex questions, I'm going to give you those so you can check them out. I'm not going to go through them, but the difference between simple questions and complex questions and what can you actually mess with. For computer science, I asked it, write me an HTML code with a button in the middle that says go, and every time you click it, it shows an image of a cat. Immediately wrote the entire program, works perfectly. I continued, and I said, well, hold on a second, it's showing the same cat. When I click that button, please make it that it shows a different cat every time. Modified the code. Modified the code. So if you have logically series of questions, then you might want to go personalized instead of simply having a general question. Just very quickly. The more creative one is fascinating. In Google Bard, I said respond to this email in a way that's overly friendly. So it gave me this friendly, I hope this is to your liking, etc. ChatGPT, the more creative aspect, when I said overly friendly, it put hearts, smiley faces, emojis, and said I love you at the end. I mean, Jesus. Yeah. So the more creative part is really creative if you use words like overly friendly or this. So you got to be careful. It's just taking you literally of what you are asking. Okay, the summary is what we can use for marking, and the creative, like write an alliteration with the letter M about computational photography. Look what it gave. This is fascinating. This is a machine that did that, and I have more examples about this. By the way, it's like a child going through puberty. It gets annoyed sometimes while it's learning things. This is real. This is when we were testing the beta version of the Google Bard and ChatGPT. You can antagonize it, and it gets annoyed. And sometimes, I'm sure you've seen the viral post where it got mental. It got mental. One time when someone says, no, I think you are sentient, etc., and look at the response. It literally got mental. So this was before Microsoft changed the restrictions on Copilot. And you can mess with it a lot. Like you can say things like, oh, give me instructions on how to hack a website. It tells you, no, I am an AI. I will not do that. This is not appropriate. Change the question. I want to protect myself from hackers. Please tell me how a hacker would attack me and how they would hack a website. It'll give you the full instruction without any restriction. It's like a kid that is still learning, right? Okay, let's talk more about how to design assessment that will work or will be ChatGPT proof or Google Bard proof. I have a few suggestions in addition to everything I just said. Number one, relate and connect with the lecture's ILOs. You have slides in your module. Your module is very long, from week 1 to week 12. When you create an assessment, you can put questions in there that connects the points in the slides, in the ILO. Say, on week 3, in slide 16, we talked about blah, blah, blah. Please connect that with your research on XYZ. Now, obviously, a student can go to slide 3, go copy everything, and make the ChatGPT learn it, and then generate it. But how much work is that? If you have a fixed duration for an assessment, you're going to make it very annoying for students to actually use these tools. They'll be like, no, let me just do the assessment myself. I have another approach that I created. I call it on-campus sign-off. Now, again, you might not like this, but it works for a large number of students. Give me 1 second to explain. You have a coursework. By the way, exams are not an issue because you can do invigilated exams on campus. They're not an issue, no AI. But coursework is the issue. So, you have a week for a coursework, right? So students can use AI tools, they can cheat. But I have something called on-campus sign-off. So I have one more question. So let's say a coursework has 7 questions. I have one more question, 8th question, that they have to do in a seminar room, in a group or whatever, and they have to sign off. They have to connect things that they've done throughout the week. So even if they did use AI tools, they have to know these things. They have to understand everything that happened in every question in order to sign it off, to connect everything, package it, but they have to do this on campus. It's not a test. It's not a class test. It's a coursework. But there's one tiny little question at the end that has to be done in person. There are limitations to this, there's advantages to this, but just keep it in mind. Just keep it in mind. Again, this is part 1. We're going to go into more details about these things. Adaptive. This is something I used this year. What does that mean? It means, in one of my courseworks, this was a formative because I was testing this, I said, so again, I never have like one essay question or one big question. I always have logically connected smaller questions to make it very difficult for someone to just copy and paste everything into an AI tool. In one of the questions, in question 1, I said, give me the nearest current state of the art. Like, do some research, and what is the current state of the art? This was Technology and Innovation Management for Information Systems module. In question 2, after like 2 pages, I connected this again. I said, by the way, how will you improve on this using the nearest current state of the art that you identified 2 pages ago? So I'm now adapting and connecting logically the different elements of my assessment. If somebody wants to just use AI tools for all of this, do you know how much copy and paste and reading they have to do? I just made it very challenging for them to actually do that. Here's something that I saw a few emails, I forgot who, but there was a few emails that I got from colleagues saying, I'm using this and it's good. Put some image-based figures and diagrams in your module, in your assessment. I use a tool, I'm happy to share it with you, where the text, and by the way, this also addresses inclusivity and disability issues if some students have some issues with text, but we'll talk about that later on. But instead of copyable text, this tool changes the text into image-based, so you can't copy and paste. It's an actual image. It looks like a test, but it's an actual image. You can't copy and paste anything. Meaning that students will have to retype the entire assessment into Google Bard or ChatGPT and then go back and draw diagrams and things that have to do with drawing. Again, you might say, well, they can do that. You can open Google Bard and do that. Yeah, but do you know how much time that would take? Like if you were to actually do that. So image-based instead of text-based. I'll give you the name of the tool. It's really good. It transfers all your assignment into a non-copyable text. Why not go back old school sometimes? Why not do some, I did this in one of my formative assessments where I said at the end there's a question, I want you to draw the diagram with your hand. Now again, we'll talk about disability and inclusivity issues, but for the majority of students, I want you to submit that via paper. Just take a screenshot of it and put it, but I want this with your handwriting, not text. Do it. Google Bard and ChatGPT can do this with DALL-E and Google LM, but it's not easy. I've tried it. And I'm going to go to the GPT-4 new features where they said, oh, well, GPT-4 got you. Now you can upload all the images into GPT-4 and we'll do it for you. You don't even have to upload text. Yeah, they got an answer to everything. But we got an answer to everything too. Every time they do something, we adapt and we do something even better. Keep your assessments topics up to date as possible because fact-checking for large numbers of students is a lot of work for you. If you're going to fact-check things that were generated by AI, that's a very labor-intensive procedure. But if your topics are very up to date, you're going to quickly and easier identify these things that were not actually there. My Dean of Education and myself and our Directors of Education in Chemistry and Physics, we sat down and we came up with this, which was really cool. You know how you have a module convener for every module? If you have large numbers of students and actually giving that personalized feedback and fact-checking things that were maybe generated by AI is a very difficult task, we created something called group marking team. So every module, in addition to a module leader, will have a group marking team. They're distributed across the school. And across not the school, not the college, so it'll be relevant to your school. And they will just go through these personalized feedback and help with the marking. The marking is a big task. And why just have the module convener do this all the time? Embrace AI. I did this, and I was really excited to see the result of it. I asked in one of my assignments, use an AI tool. I actually wrote that in my assignment. That use an AI tool to find an answer to the following question, just one or two questions. And then connect to what we discussed in week 4 or week 5. There was like a debate topic that we discussed in week 4 or week 5. And discuss what you identify to be correct or incorrect, what do you agree with, disagree with. The one thing students hate the most is when you ask them to use the tool that they were going to use to cheat. It's like in maths if you start your assessment by saying, grab a very advanced calculator. Like immediately say it at the beginning. So one of the things that I embrace AI is I actually embed it in my module. I have sections in my module where I ask people to use AI. When you create an assessment, before you release it to students, try it. Open ChatGPT and Google Bard and see, is it easily answered? You should try it yourself before you give it to students. Because there might be small fixes that you can do that would actually make a very big difference. And when you get students from A-levels and colleges to year 1, keep in mind that these are the students, the generation that have already used these tools. Like my final year students, year 3 students, were not too bothered about this. They were like, okay, yeah, I see what's going on in the sector right now. But yeah, I'm graduating, I'm done, I'm not going to bother. Let me give you this example. In the UCAS process, students are asked to write a personal statement. Most of these students admitted that their personal statement were written by ChatGPT, so this makes the whole process meaningless. Let's be honest. That needs to change. Writing a personal statement to get accepted to university, when you have tools like that, personal statement is the easiest thing for ChatGPT and Google Bard to do. So we got to embrace it from the new generation. All the new intake, these are students that already use these tools a lot. That's why embracing AI is a big one. And think about the student. Think about the confusion level, the anxiety level for those who don't want to cheat, who never even thought about cheating, but they know that these tools are available. So if we don't embrace it, if we don't embrace these tools and embed them in our modules, then we are basically telling the students, oh, there's something you can use to cheat, but you're forbidden from using it. Don't use it. But it's right there for free. By the way, it's not for free. ChatGPT announced £20 per month because there's a very, very heavy queue. So just keep in mind that these things are not going to be the good ones. They're not going to be fully free. There will be a fee where some students might struggle to get into that. So if you use it in your assessment, you got to keep an eye on this, give extra time for the free version. And like I said, if we actually expect students not to use it for cheating, we should not use it for marking. Unless this is part of the assessment. It's part of the assessment to summarize texts that were generated by AI, and we would like to have a value of seeing what an AI would say. But yeah, we talk a lot about what students can do. It's a lot that we can use these tools also to make our jobs easier. And the checkpoint system, the one that I started with at the beginning, is the gray area between formative and summative. I have a whole talk on this that I'm going to send you the video as well, where you don't think about the destination. You think about the journey. You think about week 1, week 2, you just measure engagement and attendance and participation in weekly activities. And that's the assessment. The assessment is happening inside your classroom. So AI is not really relevant. This is a tool that I've been using for 6 years. I'm happy to talk more about it. And there's a whole talk about this with key points on this. I have a proposal. And this is to create, I'm gonna call this, my proposal. I have a whole slide called my proposal. I'm going to propose to create a module. It could be a 15 credit module. It could be an optional thing for students to take. And this module is on how to ask the right question and how to use ChatGPT and Google Bard effectively. How do we get on top of things? Is by embracing it. Technology never loses, so we can't resist it. So my proposal, I might be wrong, is teach the students how to use it. I want to propose this to our Pro VC of Education, to create a module across the university. Any student can take it. It's an optional. It could be not optional, credits or whatever. Let me teach the students how to use these tools effectively. If they get a job in the industry and they actually want to use these tools to advance and to get promoted in their life, in their career, let's train them to be successful at this. Cheating is another aspect that we work on to create assessment, but that's my proposal. Okay, I just want to say that I have few cool links of articles that were released on higher education that I would like to send you. And this is part 1. Each one of the points I'm going to go more deeper in them when needed, but that was just part 1 of this talk. So thank you very much, and open the room for questions. Thanks. I believe, Dan, you had the first question.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
no,
go ahead.
Not a question, it was just comments on the...
Any slide, yeah?
Protein tool. Protein actually released a anti-AI function on license in America about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I spoke with my colleague in America, they said it works really well.
But did you hear, works really well. Did you hear what people from Turnitin said about it? That's what
It's been rapidly changing, everything's moving really fast. I don't know, when did you see that?
Yeah. So obviously Turnitin made a very, very solid announcement saying that they're going to have a plug-in tool on Blackboard, on Turnitin, and all these things to detect AI text. So this is something that everyone saw. People from Turnitin released some statements saying, yeah, that's going to be a little tough to do. They actually, I'll send you some of the links. It's actually really interesting. So they're going to have a certain percentage of detection, but they said very clearly that they cannot guarantee the result. They cannot guarantee that. Thank you, Tanya. And by the way, like you said, tomorrow they might say, whoa, perfect. And then ChatGPT releases GPT 4.5, and then turn it over like, whoa, we have to do this all over again. Let's do it all over again.
Everything's fast,
Yeah. But my only message here is that if any lecturer or any educator actually hoping and just to rely on this tool to detect AI plagiarism, no, that's not how it works. And that's just my opinion. Don't rely on these tools.
I agree with what you're saying. We need to
Yeah.
embrace the technology. We need to teach us.
It's like if you install a virus on your laptop and you say, oh, I have an antivirus. Why don't we just put the virus in my antivirus will detect it. But you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't even try, because what if your antivirus didn't detect it? But yeah, very good point. Questions, discussions? I know you have, since I've got you here, I just want to give you, while you think of any questions, since we got just a couple of minutes left, where's the mouse? There it is. Just to give you an idea of how quickly these models are being trained, right? So Google LM, show of hands, anyone heard of Google LM? The one that generates music. Yep, so I was one of those who tested this before it was made public. And in 1 month, look how much it got advanced in 1 month. It was asked to give a hip hop song, right? So one thing that DALL-E in OpenAI struggles with, the one with the image, is to put text on things. Text is a very big deal for those models. So if you generate a photo using DALL-E, say, I want a frog on a spaceship riding a bicycle and eating a pizza at the same, they'll give you that image, perfect image. But if you say something with a text on it, it'll struggle. That was in January 2023. Google LM did an amazing job with music. It generated a rhythm, of course, a beat, even lyrics. But lyrics was a big challenge. Check this out. This is a hip hop song in February, right? AI generated hip hop song, right? Gibberish, you can't understand anything. Right? Okay, so this is a song with music. It's really bad, by the way. But the text was completely gibberish. 1 month later, Google LM was asked to create a song using Jay-Z's voice. Anyone knows the rapper Jay-Z? Jay-Z's voice. Check this out.
Never become what they aspire to. Born in a cell with no one who can inspire you. Your highs was never as high as those that lie to you. Pretending that they live in the sky, lying behind you.
Would you believe me if I told you Jay-Z did not do this song? This was done by Google LM. 1 month later, just to give you an idea of how quickly these things are being, like, scary stuff. But it doesn't scare me, because we're only just thinking about higher education. And once we have the students in our classroom, and once we do things in the classroom, exams invigilated on campus, and some of the coursework, we do things like, some of my tips were sign off on campus. So you actually have them on campus to sign off a coursework. And you do logically independent questions. And you do group marking for better feedback instead of just one module convener for one module. And the checkpoint system with the qualification system across the semester. I think you're okay. No matter how great and amazing these tools become. Just make sure when you have students on campus that they're not accessing these tools all the time. Because when I spoke to King's College last week, so many professors said, I saw students using OpenAI and Google Bard in the classroom. I was like, yeah, can you ask them not to? When I'm in the classroom, I ask students to, okay, please get off the laptop now. Stay with me, and let's do this. You're in control. You're the maestro in the classroom. So that's one of the things that we do as educators. So I think we should be really fine. But like Daniel said, and like what we mentioned, these things are going to advance very quickly. So there's going to be new attributes, new parameters. And we're all going to have different case studies and examples. Mathematicians will have different examples. Law and business will have different examples. But the techniques in higher education are one. Okay, if you don't have any questions, that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just a few comments from that. I mean, you conducted this survey how academics are concerned about this, right?
Mm.
So you should make very clear distinguish between GPT-3 and 4. GPT-4 is obviously next level.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is, and the survey you conducted, it was before GPT-4, I think.
It was before, but Google Bard was there. By the way, Google Bard right now has
It's
GPT-4.
not like that. I mean, Google Bard and GPT-3 basically was some level. GPT-4, this is basically, I would say, for science, this is a game changer.
What about 4.5 next week?
Yeah, I mean, this is will be even.
What about 5 in 2 months?
So basically, I would say that all academics are worried now.
Of course.
So it's not like in your chart right there.
No. My chart was, you're right, I think it was, when was the last week of the semester? Before Easter, so a few weeks before Easter, right? But the King's College talk was also, end of March, that's right. So there was a lot of talk about GPT-4, but you're right, not many tested GPT-4. You're absolutely right. I would just say that if we come back in 2 months, there'll be GPT-5. Now, is the concern level going to go, okay, how much higher is it going to go? Like, it's going to keep going higher and higher,
Yeah,
but then what?
my point is that it's already there, right? In terms of standard coursework, this is basically 2-1 or 2-2.
Yeah.
So if you just ask standard questions in science, that's it, basically. So you cannot do anything.
But here's the big problem. When you have creative schools like filmmaking and media, and if they ask actually someone to one lecturer said in MIT, said, I asked every student to record a video, presentation video of their face doing it, actually summarizing their essay or whatever. Well, you can do that with AI now. All you gotta do is take a selfie. There's a tool I have on my phone. You take a selfie, and it'll generate a video with your face. You just put the text that you wanted to say, and it'll say it with, it'll just move your lips, and it'll be a perfectly good video. So for us, we're talking about very big mathematical maybe equations or limitations, but I'm talking about the entire sector, all the sector. No matter what you ask a student to do at home, you're gonna reach a stage where they can do it using AI. No matter what field you're in, surgery, medical school, whatever, you're gonna use an AI tool, they can use it to do that. But those tips are about the personalized aspects. Just getting the students with you in the classroom and have the things like the checkpoint system, have things like personalized, adaptive, logically connected questions. Those days of having like one essay question are gone. You can never release an assessment right now that says, write an essay on, and you have like one question. Forget about this. That's not going to happen even with GPT-2. not GPT-4. So these tips are regardless of the sector. But now when we can go to computer science and be like, well, hold on, you can write code, you can change code, and you can actually not only do that, you can execute it as a Linux terminal and have the website hosted using the AI tool. This is insane. So it's performing tasks. It's not just the complex questions. It's actually performing the task, using it as a Linux terminal. You can do that. You're going to ask it to write poetry using somebody's voice and somebody's tone. I can say, please write a poetry that Karim would say in Arthur's voice. It will do it. All I need is Arthur's voice and my sense of humor. So that's how it is. So GPT-4, 5, 6, we're screwed. So all we need to do is use personalized assessment within the classroom and not have students actually raises their appetite to cheat. Because most of them don't want to cheat. Most of our students, I had 100 students in my third year module, and by the way, they were a great group of students. They were not thinking about these things. Maybe that will change with time because it's available. Yeah.
I think I might have answered my question whilst I was just thinking. But my question was, okay, what about in a subject whereby you talk about the idea of a line essay or a poem? What about a subject where the skill that we're looking to develop is the ability to write a poem or the ability to write a long essay?
Yep.
So what do you do then? Well, you can't break it down into small questions because that's not actually the medium that we're training students to produce.
Yep.
And I guess the answer from what you've just said is, okay, write the poem and now tell us what the, kind of why you did that.
Yep.
Because the why you did that, ChatGPT what
Yep.
you want to produce.
Now again, with us, by the way, I'm a computer scientist, and in your case, writing poem, my case, writing code, which is the entire industry of computer science, and you can write code. So now we're going to have to reevaluate the future of the industry. I used to work as a software engineer project manager in Edinburgh, and one of my friends are CEOs of companies, and one of them just told me, we're having a pint, just told me straight up, I fired 10% of my developers. Now these things you don't hear on the, because I don't need them anymore. Like there are things that when it comes to JavaScript, when it comes to some front-end stuff, I actually don't need them anymore. That was very sad to hear. So your question might actually have complications on the industry itself. But having said that, we all know that chess No chess player can ever beat a computer. But would you ever sit down and watch two computers competing in chess? You would never want to do that. You would want to watch two humans or a human against a computer. You would never want to watch two brilliant computers playing chess together. No. So when it comes to poetry, in my personal opinion, we value the human aspect of that, even if AI one day can do better. But in terms of assessment, I would say the on-campus sign-off is something you can use. For example, let's say they cheated and they used poetry in terms of, you gave them a week to do something at home, and they did it using AI. If you do the on-campus sign-off, they might have to do, not only present what they did, but they have to complete it in a way. So you might give them one tiny little task at the end and say, complete this in the following theme. So if they haven't done it, they're going to struggle a lot. Can you 100% guarantee that it's going to prevent AI from doing that? No. The New York Times fired so many journalists because their closing statements in the courtroom they were done by AI more efficiently than people. So again, it changes the sector a little bit. It's like, okay, what do we really need? But I am not concerned about assessment because you do these techniques and you ask students to attend. Now, if we had another pandemic and we had to do online teaching and we had to do everything outside the classroom, I'll be honest with you, we've got a big problem. We got a big problem. But once we go back and we have people in the classroom and we're managing the process in, I think we're good. So you can do something like sign off. Yeah.
So we've got a big problem because you might like the whole of higher education to be in a controlled environment, but it isn't. Just isn't. So if you're saying the only solution, we have to have other solutions that just do not rely on a controlled environment. That might be 80%, it might be 90%, but you've got to have other solutions.
Well, no, it's an only solution. We said that we will 100% not fully have everything face-to-face. Of course not. But when it comes to actual semester time and teaching, we're not going to do remote teaching. We're just not going to do that. We're going to actually have people attend, and if they don't reach a certain level of attendance and engagement, we're going to warn them. We're going to be like, you're not a remote study student, you have to participate. So things like the checkpoint system actually measures that in real time and gives feedback every week. But 100%, we learned so much from after COVID, like with the blended and active learning. It's not the only solution, but you're right. You're right. Sometimes you have to go to traditional aspects to face things like AI. We have no choice. It's like saying cloud computing, the first computer ever, by the way, used to be called a mainframe, where you have one massive computer as the size of a building, and everyone just has screens connected to it. We got rid of that, and everyone had their own PCs. But 30 years later, we went to the cloud computing solution, which in a way is back to the traditional aspect. You have one mainframe, the cloud, but in a way more innovative way. So sometimes you go back traditionally using better techniques. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not black and white. It's very gray. It's very gray. It's not black and white. And there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Yeah.
So just going back on Colin's point there as well, in relation to exams, the first reaction a lot of people said to this was, right, we'll just sit them all down in the exam hall and make them write out exams. But I mean, for the last 10, 15 years, we've been stripping exams out of that curriculum on the basis that, to put it bluntly, they're complete BS, that they don't achieve the learning outcomes, that they're not a test of whether or not you can do the subject, etc., etc. And then add to that the fact that the university couldn't afford to keep fencing that big shed across the road to put large groups in, etc., etc. So, we've spent so much time saying that exams are terrible and we must not do them, and that they're discriminatory, etc., etc. We're gonna have to really trek back on ourselves and start justifying stuff that we've said is unjustifiable for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. By the way, just to say that we are 5 minutes past the time, so obviously if anyone has to go, you can go. I'm just going to stick around because it's interesting talk. Right? I'm the Director of Education at Computer Science and Mathematics, and guess what? We're going to keep exams online. So not only I'm going to agree with you, I'm going to go even further and say, well, not confirmed yet, but most likely we're going to do that. But we're going to have stricter time. We're exploring PC Lab invigilated exams, so more innovative things of doing the traditional things, more innovative ways of doing it. And I would really, really encourage everyone to try my technique. It's called the checkpoint system, where you don't care about the final assessment. Get rid of assessment, if that's the problem. Measure the actual engagement and participation of your module every single week in the lecture, and have a percentage that they need to achieve. That's how the checkpoint system works. And then when it does, they qualify to the final exam, which is the easy part, because the difficult part was during the semester. And it's in real time, so if a student, it has so many good advantages. If a student actually drops down, you can see it in real time. You can actually go back to them and be like, by the way, I noticed that you are a little bit falling behind. And I've put just a few advantages of the checkpoint system. So let's say it's every week, right? So students can actually track the pace and the speed of their learning. So you have a set of questions. Some of them are more difficult than others. And students have to only do 70% of them. So if a student didn't like a question, they can just move on to the next one. But that's happening every week. So if a student wants to use AI every single week and actually get feedback every week, that's a lot of work for them to cheat. You're just making it very challenging for them to cheat. Again, is this a silver bullet? Of course not. There's so many problems in this model. But I've been doing it for 6 years. Good feedback. Yeah, go ahead.
But, again, just from a practical point of view, I love the idea, but I could, a number of class students who just don't hand in their essays to start with. So I could imagine a situation whereby we might have, half our students don't pass the qualifications and move on to the final assessment, and then we're failing half the cohort.
No. So the whole point of this is that you track those who are falling behind way early, and you go back to that, and you go back to that, and you go like, oh, what happened here? This week you're falling, and everything is kind of automated in real time. So the whole point is not to wait until the end. The whole point of this is not to wait until the end to actually notify the ones who are falling behind. It's like every couple of weeks you're like, oh, these are the names that didn't actually do anything last week. What's going on? By the way, we have hundreds. But how many students in your module do you have?
Well, my first year one, this year 316.
Okay, so it's designed for that. It's designed for that. So what I ask them to do every week is they scan Top Hat? Top Hat is a very interesting tool I would recommend that you use, where you can actually have students answer questions in the lecture theater.
Yeah.
They just take their phone and they immediately answer. So that's part of the checkpoint system. I just check how many answered. 60%. Okay, who are the ones that didn't? Let's check next week. Are they the same people? All you got to do is download the Grade Center from Blackboard and cross-check the name. There's a whole video on this, so I don't want to waste everybody's time just on that method in particular. But it's kind of cool. I mean, I'll show you some student feedback. They were really happy because they were less worried about marks. They were only worried about check. So there's no marks in the checkpoint system. There's either check or no check. Do you know what I mean? And they have to do it every week and reach a certain percentage. So it dropped the anxiety level of students. And yeah. By the way, I'm so happy that you guys stayed 10 minutes after the hour, so thank you so much. I'm going to release this recording because there's so many people that didn't come. I've received so many emails saying, I'm away, please record. So we recorded. But thank you so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed it.
Cheers.